Hello and welcome to another episode of the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore, psyched to be with you on this Tuesday afternoon. Joining me today is Senior Editor John Snyder. What's up, man?
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's always good to podcast on a Tuesday. It's a good vibe today, right?
It is. It's already been a big week.
Big week.
Big Bronco week.
Yeah.
That is Road Test Editor Zach Palmer chiming in there with basically a huge part of the podcast today, the Bronco.
A little teaser of what you're about to hear. We are definitely going to talk about the Bronco a lot.
Bronco, then we will talk a little bit about this SubRanger pickup we just keep hearing endless rumors about. I think that's kind of interesting. We're going to go through some reviews. We've all been in the Power Wagon, which was a lot of fun. And Zach, you took the Forester to New Orleans, so you have to tell us about that.
Certainly.
The pictures on this story are great. If you like old cars from the Dukes of Hazzards, you'll have to tell us the backstory with that. That looked like, just explain at some point how you ran down the police and apparently the Duke's car. So, and then lastly, we will spend your money. Got a good one for you in the luxury small crossover phase. But let's get right into it. The Bronco. We have now seen basically all forms of the Bronco Sport, the full-size Bronco 4-door, the Bronco 2-door in 4-door, the Bronco full-size in 2-door trim. So that's like most of the lineup, unless they've got some solar-powered thing that they are holding back. I mean, we've basically seen the Bronco. These have come courtesy of a couple of different forums, Bronco 6G and Bronco Sport. So those guys were out there uncovering these things. The internet went crazy for them. I mean, everybody picked up on these things. And now it's sort of left to us to talk about them. A day later, we have seen a lot of spy shots. This isn't all like totally brand new news, but it's basically the most complete picture yet of what we really think the Bronco is going to be. I'd say my initial impressions are good. I'm actually a little surprised by the Bronco Sport. I think I like that a little bit more than I thought I would. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think. So, John, we know nothing of hybrid powertrains. We're going straight on looks here. What do you think?
I think the standard Bronco looks great. I like the 4-door thing we're looking at. I like the it looks like maybe it's wearing a soft top in one of the photos. I see sort of a wavy rear window, but all in all, I think it looks really good, looks really rugged. And yeah, it looks fun most of all. The baby Bronco, I do like that more than I thought I would. Zach mentioned to me earlier, it reminded him of the original Escape, which is a good comparison. It's got sort of that blocky outline, sort of that machismo small ute look, and I like that quite a bit. The two-tone I think looks cool, and the one we're seeing, sort of blue body with everything black from the belt line up. That's pretty cool. Still some weird things we're seeing, like those weird wheels on there, weird tires, but it's coming pretty close to being what could conceivably be production spec. And if this is what it is, I'm going to be on board with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see sort of that like old Escape look in there, but then when you get up front, I think you see a lot of almost like current Land Rover Defender in there.
Yeah,
totally.
And that I think is a really good look. We don't know much about the powertrains yet. We've actually seen a good deal about the suspensions, thanks to some really sharp-eyed spy shooters who've been sort of snapping these things for the better part of this year and last year, for that matter. But Zach, will bring you in, just kind of gut reaction. How do you feel about these?
Yeah, so John definitely previewed my big take with the Bronco Sport, in that it looks like the old Escape. The new Escape has moved so far into the realm of like a car. It's much more curved. It looks a bit like a raised Ford Focus to a certain extent. And the trend in a lot of crossovers these days, like the RAV4, the Telluride, it's to make something that isn't necessarily a super off-roady vehicle look rugged and tough. And I think that's pretty much exactly what Ford has done with the Bronco Sport. You know, you have the huge Bronco lettering on the front. You have a big Bronco Sport lettering on the back. You know, it's a smallish crossover with not like huge off-road chops or anything like the real Bronco will have, but you get to look that part. And I think that that's a lot of what people are looking for in this kind of a car, you know. But no, like the big news really is, you know, seeing that sort of blurry image of the big Bronco, and I'm still like somewhat skeptical, you know, as to like the complete authenticity of the photo. I mean, it looks. I mean, if it's not real, I think it looks pretty much exactly like what the Bronco is going to look like, anyways. I mean, it's really, really close to a lot of the spy shots that we've seen. The proportions are right. You know, even just like you mentioned, we've seen the suspension before. It looks like what the suspension looks like in the spy shots. The roof has that awesome squared look, and I mean, I'm really impressed with what they've actually pulled off here. I think the Wrangler looks pretty good, but I think if I was just comparing these two based on looks, I think that the Bronco looks tougher, and I would probably take it over a Wrangler, especially that two-door. That mock-up, it is just, I mean, it really, really inherits that classic Bronco shape, you know, from the 60s. There's a lot of nostalgia there for people who are nostalgic about the Bronco. Yeah, no, I totally dig it. You know, a two-door, four-door, both versions are going to look good. We see that the big knobby tires, sort of Rubicon-esque. Yeah, I mean, from just these couple of photos that we've seen, I think we're on the right track. We'll see the full thing later, get all the details, but I think that this is definitely a positive sign for the pair of Broncos that we have so far.
I'm with you. I think the two-door of the big Bronco is kind of the way to go. That one really captures that sort of, you know, iconic look, rough and tough off-roader, a good deal of that sort of 1960s vibe in there, like you mentioned. That's a really good looking Bronco, I think. The four-door, I think, looks great too. Yeah, it's interesting. You already start to get into like, well, Bronco versus Wrangler. I think right now I would probably still steer towards four-door Wrangler, but maybe two-door Bronco, like just because the two-door Bronco to me looks like something really special, like something that's really cool. It would be fun to drive.
It's something we're not used to. You know, I mean, it's been a long time since the Bronco's been around. And we're very used to the look of the Wrangler. It's
a great point.
It's very everyday now, and this, you know, at least for right now, this looks, you know, sort of exciting. It you know, gets your blood going a little bit. I'm not sure how I'll feel, you know, 6 months after, you know, it's been on sale. If I'll still think it is as exciting as I do now, but yeah, I would have to wait till I learn more about it to decide whether I would go with this or the Wrangler, because the Wrangler's such a good vehicle. But yeah, this definitely looks promising.
One area that I think the Bronco could probably make some like headway is, does anybody know what the Wrangler's like safety ratings and like its sort of safety tech is? Besides it's pretty minimal, I would say, right? Like it's a reasonably like modern safe vehicle, but like it's never ranking high on lists or anything like that.
Sure.
Let me put it that way. So if you're Ford, maybe you see an opportunity to say, well, hey, wait a minute. Jeep's still in the Stone Age with the Wrangler. You want to drive something that you can feel good about putting your kid in? Well, hey, this one achieved, you know, Safety Pick Plus or something, or it's got, you know, a bunch of extra safety like features on it, if you will, that would make you feel good about maybe some of the compromises you would make with, say, the Wrangler. So, I mean, I think there's an opportunity here. And that's not to say, hey, let's water it down or make it softer, not something that it ever, you know, has or hasn't been. But I mean, you know, there are some compromises with the Wrangler that I think people don't like, you know, and you can legitimately chalk them up and think, man, as much as I like this, I wish this other thing didn't happen, you know, or wasn't this way. Why does it have to be this way, you know? And, you know, there's a lot of reasons why the Wrangler is the way it is, but I do see an opportunity here where if they could get all that rough and tough capability right, get all the design language in there, and then roll out some of these other things. I mean, that could really be like a secret, silver bullet. I would equate it to almost like what Mercedes did with the G-Class. The new generation is not wimpy, not soft by any stretch, but you could drive it without breaking your wrists trying to steer the thing, and it's got all the modern safety features on it. So there's a playbook there. It's not one that's widely used, but the segment isn't particularly big. So
I think a lot of its success for the Bronco anyway could come down to price and packaging. How much does it cost compared to a Wrangler, and what do you get for the price? Are you paying more for the Bronco name, or is there going to be like sort of a stripped down version that maybe has just the off-road stuff on it that you could get for the hardcore off-roader for less than you might get in a Jeep Wrangler?
The pricing bar is set pretty high already. I mean, the Wrangler is expensive.
Yeah.
Like pretty much no matter any way you spec it, you're looking around 35-ish minimum. And I know we had an Eco Diesel in the office that was pushing $60,000.
Yeah.
So Ford has a lot of leeway there. I feel, something as base and stripper like a Sport, or to go crazy with a Rubicon like, vehicle with leather trim everywhere, super trick roof, power everything. Like you were saying, all the safety stuff. If they actually manage to do that, like a really great lane keeping assist system, emergency braking, like all of that stuff, and not just have it in there as like an option, but make it standard, that's something that could be a serious selling point for people. I totally agree with you.
Make it score well on all the different, safety measures that we use in this day and age. And I mean, I spent, I think it was like Thanksgiving weekend or one of those kind of holiday, November, December holiday weekends where you're always doing like festive things. And we drove around, like my wife, my son, my dog, and it was fine. The Wrangler, the diesel Wrangler, it's awesome. So much fun. If it snowed, which I think it did, it was fine. You're driving this like army Jeep, you're fine. But some of the compromises about knowing like the ratings and things like that, it's a little, I don't know, distressing, if you will. Like you try to make good decisions when you have a family or you just don't have a family, but you don't want to die, like that's not to say the Jeep is like an unsafe vehicle, because of course that's not what I'm saying. But like we all know there's different vehicles that like, score really well on those safety measurements. And if you could say Ford could come in and be like, hey, this is a 5-star, or IIHS top safety pick. Well, wait a minute. Suddenly I'm going to look at that a lot harder. I'm going to say, well, wait a minute. This is something I could drive. I don't have to have that slight pang of guilt. Like, well, I know this thing it's not as safe as like, whatever, a Pacifica or something, a more boring thing. But I'm going to buy it anyway because, it's probably fine. And people do this and it's totally okay. So you guys are kind of listening to my like sort of therapy here. But I mean, long story short, I think if Ford could get in there, that's a path, to really maybe get some sales gains. And, the idea is not to make this like a super mainstream vehicle, I don't think. But I mean, you do want to get as many buyers as you can. And you never want to give people a reason not to buy your product. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're all getting fired up about this thing. I think listeners, readers, viewers, you guys are lapping this stuff up. Everybody wants more Bronco stuff. You got to check out the pictures on our site. I mean, these leaks are crazy. I mean, it's like every day, it's like somebody else seems to be like, sneaking pictures out. And I honestly haven't seen anything like this in quite some time in the automotive journalism space. So yeah, it's an interesting time. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, look at the C8. We saw nothing of that. All the Super was super leaky, but I mean, if you do it right, you can keep these things under wraps. I suppose it's possible. It has been done before.
Oh yeah. But, in fact, usually that's the norm is that they're generally kept under wraps. Maybe the C8, there were certainly a lot of spy photos. Yeah. Same with, John, you might remember this when they brought the Camaro back in like 2008 or something. Mm-hmm. Bob Lutz was just like, don't camo them. Put it out there. We're not even going to bother with like camo. Like, you want to take pictures of the car? Please do. We need that. Thank you for the free ad.
Yeah.
So to your point, Zach, there's a way to do this, and something's going wrong there. I don't know. I mean, unreliable, somebody is, getting behind closed doors. I don't know. Other thoughts of the Bronco though?
I really like, this is tangential to the Bronco or Broncos we've been talking about, but I really like the electric Ford Bronco that Zach wrote up earlier from Zero Labs.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
That's the
really
Bronco
sweet.
that I want, but that's far more expensive.
What's that one go for?
If you get the steel-bodied one, it's $185,000. If you get the carbon fiber, you're pushing $250, $260. So
no, thank you. I mean, that's a sweet looking Bronco, but
if Ford can electrify the Bronco that they're making here in a few years time,
yeah,
count me in.
Well, you got the electrified Hummer coming up.
Yeah,
truck and SUV for them, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've exhausted the Bronco. Let's move on.
Yeah, there'll be more Bronco news coming soon.
Yeah, I mean, literally by the time you listen to this, it's like we said, Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night. Who knows what else is going to happen?
Yep.
Maybe who knows?
The leaks are coming a mile a minute.
They're coming quick. Let's talk real quick about the SubRanger pickup that seems to be like ubiquitous. It just keeps popping up in spy shots and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Ronan Glan, one of our European contributors, reports that it could reportedly cost under $20,000. We put this up a couple days ago. We don't really have a good look at this thing because it's like covered up like a hearse, essentially.
Yeah.
But strategically, this is interesting to me. I mean, I don't really know what the market is for something like this, but I mean, sure, okay. This is kind of what the Ranger used to be, is a small pickup versus the current Ranger, which is pretty big, along with the Colorado and the Canyon. So I guess my thought is, sure, great.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Ford is going to do it. Volkswagen has threatened to make a small compact pickup. But I mean, if it makes sense for anybody to make a new small utility pickup, it makes sense for Ford. They got rid of the Focus. The Fusion is going away. All of their small cars are disappearing from their lineup. So what should you replace that with? Well, Americans like utility vehicles. Mm-hmm. They love trucks. They really, really love the F-150. I mean, I think that they're probably looking at, what kind of demand the Ranger is getting and saying like, okay, we made one smaller truck, brought it here. Let's see, maybe people will go for an even smaller truck. It's definitely going to be more of a lifestyle thing. It's not going to have like 10,000 pounds towing or anything crazy like that. It's, you're going to be able to throw something in the bed.
Sure.
You're going to be able to put 4 people in it. It's going to have, ideally some great tech inside of it, and it's going to be cheap. And, you hit all those things, and somebody, living in suburbia could be like, okay, I'll buy this instead of a Ford Escape. I can throw something in the bed.
Yeah, I kind of love the idea of it, especially if you're, an artist or someone who needs to throw stuff in the back, like big canvases. My stepdad bought a truck specifically so we could move artwork around. Or, if you're someone who moves apartments once a year, once every 2 years or something, you don't need a big truck, but if you want to be able to move stuff around, this is a good thing, and you can still drive it on a daily basis and not get horrible fuel economy. And Ford's got the platform already sitting right there, and they've got at least some sedan customers that they've pushed aside that are waiting for something else. They could probably get at least some of those back, and probably a bunch of new customers. I think it's a good idea. I'd be excited to see it, and I'd be excited to drive it, and it just sounds like super useful for the right person, which is normal people.
I kind of wonder if, let's say they roll this out and it's good, I wonder if it's going to end up sort of cannibalizing the Ranger, because the Ranger is, I think, going to find itself in this like kind of middle no man's land where it's like, it's sort of like, this lifestyle truck that's also pretty capable, but it's also pretty big, but it's not as big as an F-150. So like, you're out there, what do you want? So there's the F-150 buyer, then there's this sort of like sedan, utility lifestyle buyer. And then the Ranger is kind of playing in both spots. It feels to me like this could cannibalize the Ranger a little bit. I mean, it's very hypothetical. Who knows? I'm a little skeptical that this is going to like help with like Fusion buyers or Focus or Fusion or Fiesta buyers. I just feel like there's people who like wanted smaller or mid-sized sedans, and those people are not going to want like a small pickup truck. I think, that's where I think Ford kind of sort of gave up some sales, gave up its audience for no real reason. But I mean, like I said, I'm pro product. Like, you want to give me something new and throw it in a segment, please do. Yeah. Even if I don't totally get the business case for it, sure. Yeah, slice it up. Let's go. Cool. Well, I guess that's our thoughts on the SubRanger. The SubRanger sounds like some sort of like spy hunting thing in a Jules Verne novel. Like, we're to send in the SubRanger to find the U-boats. I don't know.
We'll have to make a poll, asking for what people think this should be called. Because
actually, I think the SubRanger sounds pretty good. Like,
I've seen Courier thrown around before, just because the old Ford pickup was called Courier. Doesn't really have a great ring to me. That was before my time, but I could see there being some value in bringing back that name for somebody that wants a small pickup, remembers their old small pickup.
Yeah.
What about the Maverick? That kind of makes sense.
The Maverick is just a cool name in general. Honestly, it should be in the Ford lineup somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. My parents had a 70 and a 73 Maverick. So back in the day, everybody was buying those cars. They lasted for about 5-6 years, and then you got something else because they rusted quickly. So, hard fade here to electric vehicles from General Motors. John, you went behind closed doors at the tech center. That's General Motors, like fortress like campus. It takes up like a square mile or two over northeast of the city. It's a very awesome place to go, I think. Really, if you're a car geek, it's amazing if you could get in there, which you basically can't. They keep it, it's like a fortress. But you saw and heard about some really important vehicles. Stories are all up. They went up last Wednesday. But this is the first time we've been able to get John on the podcast since then, and just really kind of break it down and get into like what maybe the cool points of these vehicles are. So just, some impressions from that event.
Yeah, frankly, I was pretty blown away by everything they had there. They had 10 new EVs out there. Well, some are newish, but they had three Cadillacs, a Chevy, 2 Buicks, 2 GMC Hummer vehicles, and then 2 versions of the Bolt, all electric. All electric. It was really kind of insane. I was not expecting to see all that. I was expecting to see maybe the Cadillac Lyric, which is their midsize electric crossover that we didn't know the name of until that day, and maybe if we were lucky, the Hummer pickup that they've been teasing. But yeah, they had so much more. Some of them were basically working clay models with, stuff, like fake body panels put on them. So there was no interior to see. And they're, pretty rough representations of what the cars will be, but they were all representative of real products that they 100% intend to manufacture. There was, in addition to the Lyric, there was a Chevy smallish midsize crossover and a Buick one as well. And there was a Buick smaller crossover that kind of looked like the Bolt. And then they had the next gen, sort of refresh Bolt that's coming, I think, next year. that will have an updated interior. It has sort of real seats. The current Bolt has those really thin, sort of dinky seats.
It's not the most comfortable thing to ride around in.
So this has more comfortable seats and sort of a redesigned dash and instrument panel. And then they had the Bolt EUV, which it looks a little taller than the Bolt, but it's not. If you look closely, it's not taller, except for the roof rails. It has roof rails on it, and it's about 3 inches longer. And the GM spokesman told me that 3 inches goes to the rear legroom, which is one of the places where the Bolt is kind of lacking. It's lacking in the cargo area too, but if you fold down the rear seats in the current Bolt, it's already very competitive compared to the Leaf and the Kia Hyundai EVs. This is going to be even more useful. But it looked just like the regular Bolt
Just
for the
like
most
a regular
part.
Bolt.
Yeah. Things could change between now and the launch, but yeah. And then there was the Hummer pickup, which is very large, as you'd expect. It had the what's the GMC tailgate, the Pro
Multi-Pro
tailgate. It had that on it. And then there was a slightly shorter wheelbase Hummer SUV that was all enclosed, that looked just like it from the B pillar forward, and then just a smaller enclosed rear cargo space, and a big spare tire on the back. And then there was an Escalade looking thing on the same truck platform as the Hummers. So yeah, they've got a lot of stuff coming down the line pretty quickly over the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see how they roll it out, how they get the dealers on board. Mark Royce and Mary Barra were both there. Mark Royce was talking about getting dealers on board. Basically, and Mary Barra was saying the same thing. This is the future. You're going to want to get on board with us, or you're just going to get left behind.
Yeah, totally logical.
It's not really a choice. But yeah, it was really interesting. It was really cool to see all these things. And then at the very end, they uncovered, it was under a sheet with the illuminated Cadillac emblems front and rear. It was clearly a sedan. They pulled it off, and it was the Cadillac Celestiq or Celestiq.
I like Celestiq.
I think Mark Royce
Celestiq's probably better.
Mark Royce pronounced it more like Celestiq. And that was cool. Really long sedan, sort of a really swoopy, almost fastback, really long wheelbase, big wheels. It had 23-inch wheels or 24-inch wheels on this. But basically it's going to be a hand-built, coach-built car. And Sven wrote something up that it could cost up to $200,000.
It's crazy.
But this is sort of their new Halo vehicle, especially in terms of styling. But apparently this car, the Celestiq, was designed before the Lyriq, and so it's sort of informed the Lyriq and upcoming Cadillac EV design language. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
What I think is really interesting about all of this is clearly General Motors has some stuff, like some really good stuff behind closed doors. And right now, all the stuff that you described, if they could even get half of that out right now, they would be ruling the world. Like nobody else has that kind of scale, the scope, the breadth of all the different things that they're, trying to get out there. I mean, they would immediately leapfrog Tesla, Toyota, anybody else as far as having just, critical mass and just quite simply amazing electrified products. So, I mean, that's really, I think the challenge here is get it out soon before other people, because if you could do that, you're the person in that space. You're the, look what Toyota did with the Prius. They weren't first and they weren't even really best, but they got there when really nobody else was there at that point. And then they've held it on for like 25 years or so. So if GM can, get out there with some of these things like this electrified Cadillac SUV that sounds kind of like an Audi e-tron fighter. I mean, man, that's how you change, you change things. Like I'm sure there's buyers that if they like think electric first and brand second, and as much as, you're always going to run into people who are like, well, I want it because it's a Tesla. I don't want it because it's a GM car or a Ford or even a Toyota. They want the Tesla. But I think there's a broad swath of customers that if you said you're going to get this much range and it looks like this, and hey, it's a Chevy. What do you think? And it costs this much, and you could go get it on your corner from your Chevy dealer. You're going to win over a lot of hearts and minds with that sort of thing. And that's where GM is sort of uniquely positioned because they're so big. They're far bigger than anybody else in the United States anyway. And that's where you win.
If they can provide reasonably cost vehicles, with long ranges, take the Bolt formula basically and apply it to other vehicles for sure. And then, like the Cadillac brand, I think this definitely elevates the Cadillac brand. And I was pleased to see that they're putting a lot of thought into interiors. The interior of the Lyriq was gorgeous. And, they had renderings for some of the other ones. Couldn't see all of them. But it was cool to see that they're actually putting thought into the interior more than I usually expect of GM. And a lot of screens, a lot of curved LED screens, and interior illumination, and really interesting plays with mixing materials like wood and metal and lighting. Along things like the door panels and trim and things like that. So it was definitely well thought out, and hopefully they can execute it as well as what they showed us. Because if they can, it's going to be good for those individual brands and GM as a whole.
Yeah, it's really great to hear about the interiors actually, because I mean that's one of the areas where you look at like a Cadillac XT6 or an XT5 or where they're a step behind something like the Mercedes and the Audis of the world. But if they can get that in their new generation of electric vehicles, which is where Cadillac says they want to go, they want to be the electric brand of GM. If they can actually take those interiors and make them Mercedes level or beyond Mercedes level, I feel like they have a really good chance of winning those people over to an American luxury brand as opposed to one of the German luxury brands that have taken over so much in the US now.
Right.
I think you've seen, I interviewed Mark Royce once at the New York show, and somebody asked him in this sort of small group of reporters, because he was talking about American, just buying American. And he said something like, well, no, you shouldn't just buy it because it's American. He's like, you should buy it because it's awesome. This isn't some syrupy retro thing. He's like, you want to buy it because one, I think, a lot of people do and I don't want to get political here, but I think people do take pride in buying something that is American if it's genuinely better and they like it and it's accessible. And that's, I think, the point he was trying to make. And that's where, you can sort of non-politically, but wave the flag here. If you're an American car company, you make something that's desirable. I mean, you
like Tesla,
Tesla. That's a great example. Or there's a little bit of controversy over some of the Shinola watches, which have Swiss movements, but are put together in Detroit. Mm-hmm. I mean, you've seen a resurgence in goods where it's oh, hey, that was made in Michigan or that was made somewhere else. Chrysler was an Italian car company that was owned by all sorts of different people, and they literally rolled out imported from Detroit slogan. Yeah. And that worked really well for them. And half their vehicles were made all over the place. They don't even, I mean, I'm just saying, I think there's an opportunity there,
Mm-hmm.
So cool. We should probably talk about some of the things we've been driving. How about the Ram Power Wagon? Yeah. That is, speaking of FCA, man, that thing's fun. When that hit the car sign out sheet, I was psyched. I was like, I cannot wait to get in this thing. The one we had was it was all black, basically. It was. And it was, oh man, that thing was fun to drive.
Yeah. I actually took it home for the weekend. And I'll just describe a bit of my weekend with it, because like everything I did with it was awesome. Like the first night that I had it, I drove it downtown Ann Arbor with a friend, which is like, whoa, because it's so huge. It's my friend hops in it right away. He loves it. You're taller than everything else on the road.
It is very tall.
The only things that are out there that are actually taller than you when you're sitting up there is like a semi truck. You roll up next to F-150s, big Silverados. No, it's the Power Wagon. It's the heavy duty, and it's lifted. It's even bigger. But it was surprisingly simple to parallel park in downtown Ann Arbor. I had 360-degree camera right there, and I slotted it right in the spot, throw in the front camera, snug it right up to the car in front of me, and boom, it actually fit in a parallel parking spot in a downtown area. Maybe that doesn't work in Chicago or New York City, but for smaller downtowns,
Ann Arbor's pretty tight
fine.
though.
It is.
That's
and,
impressive.
I was super happy with that. The next day, I actually did some things you're supposed to do with a Power Wagon, which is basically just turn it south, find some dirt roads, find as much mud and dirt and everything that I could. And that's where this thing really, really turned into a riot. I just aim for the potholes, aim for the... it had recently rained around there, so all the roads were pretty torn up. And, when you're just cruising at like 60 miles per hour on a dirt road, you hardly even feel the potholes. You're just kind of cruising over them, and it's just isolated out. You're over this washboard road that in most cars would just be like jarring the crap out of you. But in this case, it's just kind of like, oh, I'm just rolling over here, my, super heavy, super huge tired truck. And, I see the appeal of like burning down a dirt road in one of these. Like you turn traction control off, rear wheel drive. Every single corner is a tail wagging bit of fun. That big 6.4 liter makes a great sound.
That's a great motor.
Yeah, it's a lot of motor in like a Charger or Challenger Scat Pack. It's nowhere near as quick in the big Power Wagon, but it's still a fantastic time. But it managed to hit those. Drive it downtown. I was happy with it. I could see how somebody could actually like buy this truck and drive it around as a daily driver. I wouldn't recommend it. I got about, I think, 9.7 or 9.8 mpg in my time with it. It was real bad. But
the gas tank's huge, so you're fine, right?
Yeah, the gas tank is huge. I went and put like 10 gallons in it. It went from like a quarter tank to about a half tank.
So you basically need to fill it up with like, an oil tanker or something. And the Exxon Valdez or whatever a famous, I don't know, oil tanker is. But that thing's got a lot of capacity to hold oil.
Exactly.
Or gas.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, it's a fun truck, and that's why you buy the Power Wagon. You want to tow stuff, but you want to go off road, and man, it's just a fun experience, whether you're on the road or off the road, whatever,
My favorite thing about it, if I owned one, I'd have to buy another Nalgene because it has 3 central cup holders, and each one of them is big enough for my 32-ounce Nalgene, which I thought was fantastic.
Did you drive on your lawn with it?
I didn't this time. No.
Why not? It's lifted.
Yeah. I don't know. I
drove on my lawn a little bit. It was an accident.
I planted some small trees that are really hard to see. So I haven't been driving across that front part where I planted some of those little seedlings. So
it would crush them real quick.
Or it would go right. I mean, it's tall enough that it could go right over them. And if I missed them with the wheel.
That's true. You could entirely miss it, actually. Yeah. It's awesome. I mean, there's not that many things out there that is like this. I mean, frankly, so I've always lived in the city or the suburbs. I've never really been like a country person. But I tell you what, if I had some room and like I lived far enough away from a city, this is what I would look to get. Jump in the big truck and we're going to go drive through the hills or whatever. And we're going to get dirt and mud on it. And it's going to be fun and it's going to be awesome. I mean, there's just something so visceral, so emotional about a Power Wagon. I mean, and this one itself looks really cool. Like there's ones that we've had come to the fleet with like the tacky, like Power Wagon graphics. I mean, even those you kind of find yourself kind of chuckling and warming up to because the truck's just so fun to drive. But I mean, this would just look badass. I mean, it's a really good looking truck. So yeah, I mean, good times. My son literally ran around it because it's so big. He ran from the back seat, huge. Hopped over the console, and was in the front. And yeah,
you could have a party in the back seat. There's so much legroom. It's like a massive luxury car back there. Honestly, this one was all leather. I mean, that's the other thing is it's so nice inside because it has all the fancy Ram stuff that was in the Ram 1500 is now in the heavy duty. So you have the big 12-inch screen, awesome looking materials, great feeling, everything. It's just, Ram is killing it.
Cool. Let's transition to the Hyundai Sonata that we had through the fleet. Excuse me. It's this one was bright neon yellowish. It was a wild color. Let's put it that way. It really got some attention. Had the 1.6 liter 4-cylinder in there. I mean, for me, it all started and ended with the styling. I mean, I could get in and out with the powertrain, but I just really am impressed with this new generation of Sonata. I think it's gutsy. They're going after it. I think at times Hyundai has gone conservative. You know, they did that whole fluidic sculpture styling almost 10 years ago now. And then they went conservative for a bit, and now I think they're back. And this is unique. I mean, I was talking to Joel about this, associate editor Joel Stockdale, news editor Joel Stockdale, I should say. And we were sort of saying, this reminds us a little bit of like 1960s, like Fords or something. You kind of got to look and you kind of got to want to see it, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, just the headlights, the way all the lines flow together. In back, the taillights maybe look a little cheesy because like they almost look a little plasticky. But overall, I think it's a really just gutsy execution. Like Hyundai went for it. I mean, there's such a thing as making like the vanilla sedan. They did not do that. So generally, I like how it looks too.
Me too. That's actually my favorite part of this thing. You know, people are not out there, you know, clamoring for sedans these days. Everybody wants the compact crossover. So what do you do to make it more exciting and maybe make people want to buy it again? You take some chances with the design, and those wild chromatic DRLs on the front are, you know, some of the most unique and nutty things on any new car today. And I'll bet that Hyundai continues to do that we see it on more cars. But the Sonata is a great start, and I think that enough people are saying that they like it that they totally will continue. I really like the interior too, and we had an SEL Plus, which isn't even the highest trim level, but you know, full nice leather interior, red contrast stitching. A lot of really great materials. It has Hyundai's fancy new push-button shifter, which was fine. You know,
I'm curious what you thought of that. Actually,
it was it's totally fine. Like it wasn't in the way. It wasn't confusing. I've seen a lot worse executions of those push-button shifters.
Yeah, it was placed well too.
Yeah.
It was easy to find and easy to avoid when touching other things.
Yeah.
So I agree with all of that. But maybe I'm an idiot, but I literally would pull up in my driveway and then hit what I thought was park, and I kept hitting reverse. It was just the way the R button was positioned. I don't know. That bugged me a little bit. That wasn't my favorite part of the car.
I would prefer, you know, some sort of mechanical doodad than those push buttons still, but it wasn't horrible.
Yeah, same. I mean, and the car, it drives well. I don't think it's the best driving car in the segment.
No.
Both the Accord and the Mazda 6, I think, are much more on the enthusiast side than this. You know, this isn't a boring car to drive. It still handles well. It's still, you know, the 1.6 turbo is plenty of power for daily use, but I'm still going to take the keys to the Accord or Mazda 6.
Yeah, Mazda 6 is great.
If I'm trying to have some fun. So
yeah, this is a really well-rounded car. I wasn't blown away driving it at all, you know.
Yeah.
But when I got home, the first thing I said to my wife was, "Wow, that Sonata's a really nice car." You know, it's just it comes together really well. It feels like a quality vehicle. It's comfortable. It's attractive. All the features are there. It's one thing Hyundai does well is just provide, a good car at a good price that's with a good amount of content for the price. And the Sonata's got it. And I enjoyed it. I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't blown away. And I would definitely pick the Mazda 6 as my choice in that segment. But this I would recommend it to someone, if they weren't looking for an enthusiast vehicle or anything close to that. If just normal person looking for a good, high quality, well-rounded sedan, that's it right there.
All three of those cars, I think, are very good looking.
Yes.
I think they're all pretty styled up. They're pretty aggressive. Sonata felt, I hate to be this cliche, but it felt luxurious as far as its looks. Like if somebody had shown me like just the silhouette of that car, I could have been sold it was any number of things. I mean, this is more aggressive than luxury design was 10, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm impressed with it. And again, so I really high on the looks, but driving, sure, fine, okay. Didn't love the 1.6 turbo. Just okay. It was fine. It was pretty good. Interior was solid. Chassis was pretty good, I think, actually. Steering was a little light for my taste, but I mean, again, you don't buy the Sonata for that. You go for the Mazda 6 if you want a more like dialed in experience.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so that's the Hyundai Sonata. Let's move on to Zach's road trip in the long-term Subaru Forester. You put some miles on our long-termer, which is good. We like that.
Yeah.
Where did you go and what did you do?
So I drove from Michigan all the way down to New Orleans. I stopped in Nashville, which is what Greg actually teased out at the start. Saw the photo of the Dukes of Hazzard car, and the police car is actually a replica of Barney Fife's police car from the Andy Griffith show.
Wow, you're really going back 80s and like 60s shows there.
I had to look it up. That was before my time. So, but no, I had to stop because you're in the middle of nowhere, rural Tennessee. It's this historic town actually called Leiper's Fork, where those two cars are from. The image I'm talking about is actually the lead image on the story itself. But yeah, no, it was sweet. You're just driving down the road and all of a sudden these two classics are here. It's like, where did these pop out from? But yeah, back to the actual road trip itself. Hopped in the car, was myself and my girlfriend, and we loaded it up on our way to Mardi Gras, basically, and we put about 2,600 miles on the thing.
Dang.
Which, after that many highway miles in a car, you tend to get to know it pretty well, as I'm sure anybody that's taken a long road trip in anything would. But yeah, there were a few things about it that stood out to me. Number one was just the comfort on the highway. This thing, it eats up highway miles really well. It's done that, going back and forth commuting in Michigan. I've put a ton of trips back and forth from the office on this thing already, but even when you're in there for about 8 hours on a single day, it doesn't get super tiring.
Yeah, I've noticed that this new platform, it's definitely smoother and quieter.
Yep.
A lot less fatigue at the end of the day when you're driving it for a long time.
Exactly, and when you have an adaptive cruise control, lane keeping assist, those all really help on a long road trip. I had never really done a long road trip with all of those like systems intact before, where you just day after day. It was always with my 2001 Integra, which has about 0 systems on it. But no, this is great. I mean, and anybody moving from a car, that didn't have all of these driving assistance systems on it into one that actually does, I think you're going to be super pleased. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, it's been like 5 hours of driving, but, I feel like I could just keep going because it's your eyes aren't glazing over or anything crazy like that. So, but no, like the actual trip was a great time. We hit Mardi Gras, got a lot of beads. We did Nashville, listened to a bunch of great music. Like one of the like weird, interesting things that I saw, like with a hotel situation, actually, I found a use for the the driver monitor where it automatically sets your seat,
Mm-hmm.
and the valet had just like totally messed the seat up. Like moved it a million miles backwards, tilted it some weird area. And the second that I got back in the car, just all of a sudden just started moving back to my position. I was like, wow, this didn't take me like 2 minutes sitting like in the middle of the road at the hotel valet to reset my thing. And, just small little things like that make a difference on a road trip. There's less stress out. I'm trying to find the navigation. Where am I going? But overall, Forester, good road trip car. Wouldn't call it a great road trip car. There are a few too many beeps and bobbles going on in there. But, I wouldn't hesitate to grab the keys again, take it for another long road trip. If it involved snow, that might be even more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving to the south, so it wasn't like it was any torrential snowstorms or anything crazy like that. But no, super easy drive. We did it was about 8 days, and just super happy with how how it all ended up. So. Yeah.
I would say you have sort of like a longer, like a writ large version of just my sentiments about the Forester in general.
Yeah.
I mean, like you want something that you're familiar with, that you could get comfortable with for a weekend, for a camping trip, football tailgating, whatever it is, you would like to do that requires a little bit of space and function. Forester's up for it. I mean, I signed it up for all of those purposes and many others, and you always... we get flashier things from the fleet all the time, but the purposes of a long-termer is to really get into it, and every time I drive it, I think to myself, this is so solid, in so many different ways. So I'm curious, best thing you ate in New Orleans or Nashville?
Oh boy. Definitely the best thing I ate on the whole trip was in New Orleans. We sat down for dinner. It was late. We had all seafood. It was oysters, redfish beignets, and we also had a big bowl of seafood gumbo and crab legs, which was just like I'm not a huge seafood person, but all this stuff just killed it. It was the best seafood that I'd ever had in my life, and that was in the French Quarter. Nashville was honestly like a close second. The hot chicken there. If you've never had hot chicken before, go do it because it's like the best chicken I've ever had in my life. So yeah, both fantastic food destinations if you're a big time foodie.
So I love all kinds of chicken. I've never heard of hot chicken in my life. So I just Googled it, and I don't know why I've been missing this this is amazing. This is basically looks like a spectacular version of buffalo wings. So
it's that, but like way better.
But way better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a traditional Nashville thing too. There's a bunch of longtime institutions from Nashville that they all have their own small takes on it, but it's all in the same vein of hot chicken, and it's the best chicken I've ever had.
So that's high praise coming from a guy who went to school at upstate New York.
Yeah,
I mean
wings.
You guys don't mess around with those. So very cool. My contributions to this final segment are I had a Sazerac when I was in New Orleans last 6 years ago. And I don't remember much else because I had several Sazeracs. So let's spend some money.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. This is a good one. This comes from Laura. She's asking us to spend her money on a crossover. This is a good one. We are looking for a luxury compact SUV. Choices are 2020 Audi Q3, Land Rover Evoque, and the Volvo XC30. Always loved the Q3, but also loves the Volvo as well. She says the Land Rover is the best looking of the bunch to her eyes. That being said, she worries about its reliability. Which one would you guys purchase? Side to LT. So thanks for writing there, Laura. I'll kick it to you, Zach. What do you think?
I'm going to go with the Volvo XC40 right off the top here. The Q3 is a great car, and the Land Rover Evoque is sort of fun and sort of interesting looking. But I think that the XC40 is both fun to drive and interesting looking. Mm-hmm. I just think that boxy style, the Swedish interior, the whole package really is, going to be what you get the most out of. I think it's the most utilitarian of them too. the Evoque. I mean, it's cool style. It's very slicked back style, but there is not much room back there. And yeah, you're worries about the reliability with the Land Rover. I think may be founded over the years when you spend some time with this. Yeah, I think you're going to be much happier with the XC40 either over both of those.
John.
I ruled out the Evoque for me personally, price, reliability. Between the Q3 and the Volvo, I'm going with the XC40. They're both great cars. The XC40, I really enjoyed just the way it's packaged, the way it's shaped. Really, I don't know if our listener has children, but for me, it was very easy to get a child seat in the car, and plenty of room for Wally to, kick his legs around. The rear cargo area is very useful. It's very tall, so I found that it's easy to stack stuff up back there. Fun to drive. It's not super exciting, but it's plucky, and it feels kind of charming going down the road. The Q3 is cool too. I just think the packaging of the Volvo is more my style. If you like the Q3, I think the technology in it, the infotainment is better. So if that's high on your list, and the styling, they're both cool styling in different ways. But I think if you really like the Q3 and you want that, go for it. But I personally would go with the XC40, but they're both great, and I would avoid the Evoque personally.
I will be the dissenter here. I really like the Q3. I think it's... I really like the current iteration of Audi styling. I think just for me personally, if I were going to pull up somewhere, I think I just feel a little prouder to roll up in an Audi. To me, an Audi has that sort of like, hey, you've made it sort of feel. Mm-hmm. You see those four rings, you see those headlights, that grille. I mean, it's an impressive looking vehicle. And I think Audis, they're one of the few brands that the smaller their vehicles get, you don't lose that sense of like, gravitas, what the brand means. It's Q3 is very much an Audi. So I think you really get that sense of presence. Again, I think, you're buying into sort of that broader meaning of what the four rings mean. That being said, even if, whatever, brand agnostic, Q3 drives really well. It has an interesting powertrain. It has a very nice interior. And, I've always enjoyed the different, experiences I've had to Q3. XC40 is a very good crossover. Styling maybe is slightly, if I'm just looking strictly at like styling, I can almost see where maybe that comes out a touch ahead. Like if we're like rating these like we do in our Autoblog rating for our scores. But to me, you can't beat the whole package of the Q3. I think it's a really, really nice, really luxurious vehicle. And I think, again, Audi, then Volvo, the Evoque really doesn't do much for me. I like almost everything Land Rover makes. I really like the different Range Rovers. I like the Velar, but the Evoque, it doesn't really speak to me too much. So yeah, I mean, I would land on the Audi. So yeah. Any final thoughts, guys?
I don't think you can go wrong with the Audi. I think that or the XC40. I think the only place where you might have some issues down the road is the Land Rover. But I'm always a sucker for the Volvo, which is why I'm firmly in the camp of the XC40. But I would totally understand if you bought a Q3 too, because the Audi holds a ton of appeal. You're absolutely right.
John, any other thoughts on this or anything else?
I've owned a couple of Volvos in the past that we bought used, and they lasted a really long time. And
That's good.
They were fun to live with.
Very good. Breaking news. You guys may have just heard the New York Auto Show may be delayed. I just saw that come across one of our Slack channels.
Really?
So we don't know if that's confirmed yet. Who knows by the time this comes out? It may or may not even be true, but I just saw that. So if you're listening to this, stay tuned with all the updates, with this, just the craziness that is, all of the, the global health, I hesitate to call it crisis, but things are happening. We had a couple of launches delayed this week. So stay tuned with Autoblog. We'll keep you up to speed on how this, evolving situation impacts the car world.
Man, I actually just saw that the news story here. Yeah, likely delayed until August.
Wow, that's
a bit of a wait.
That's huge.
That's moving into Detroit Auto Show time, actually.
It is.
Getting a little
really
close.
is. Past it. I mean, that's wow. Since we're talking about it, how do you guys feel about that? Do you like the idea of a New York Auto Show in August?
I feel like that's a little too close for Detroit. I'm not really sure. I mean, I have a feeling that everybody's saving some reveals for that big show.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what else they'd have for New York. I mean, when they canceled Geneva, everybody just revealed what they revealed anyways, because that was their product life cycle. Their plan is to reveal the car now, and then they'll, in a couple months it'll go on sale, or they'll do this. I have a feeling that the automakers are not going to just be like, oh yeah, we'll just push everything back until August. We'll change our entire plan that we've been putting forth, that we've been planning for the last 5 years.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about it at all. I'm a mess right now.
It's crazy. So I guess we'll just leave it there. I mean, obviously health and safety come first. What do you think from an auto show perspective? I mean, it's almost hard to wrap your mind around like an auto show in August, especially like in a hot climate like New York, I mean, are they going to have parts of it outdoors? Not hot year round, but you know what I mean? August in New York, Michigan is hot, warm. So, I mean, again, times are obviously changing, again, safety first and all that, but that's really, really a wild development. So, spend my money plus breaking news alert. We're really doing it live here, this podcast. Thanks for listening. Really enjoyed hanging out with you guys this week. Have a great and safe week out there to all you listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us some comments. Send us your spend my monies. Until next time, we'll see you on the other side.